As a blind or low vision athlete, you know the importance of eating right. Step up to the plate and start making healthy meals with the Blind Kitchen, where you can find lots of blind-friendly tools and tips to make cooking safer and accessible. Get a free cut glove by sending your mailing address to info@theblindkitchen.com. That's info@theblindkitchen.com. Be sure to include the words "Eyes Free Sports" in the subject line of the email.
Are you ready for today's workplace? It's faster, more competitive. On the job, employers use dozens of applications you've never heard of and have higher expectations than ever before. But that's business. As a blind job seeker, you won't get that many opportunities. So when the opportunity does strike, the job, the work, the real opportunity of employment, you better be ready. And you can do it if you put in the work to stay ready. The Workplace Readiness Accelerator program is designed to do this across 8 weeks. It's 25 hours per week, but on the other side, you will know. You'll know you've built the skills. You understand what employers expect, and you'll know how to accomplish it when you get there. You're blind, which means we've got to be twice as great to be considered half as good. So stay ready, be ready with the Workplace Readiness Accelerator program. To learn more, click on vocational rehabilitation at accessabilityofficer.com. Access Ability Officer. Ability is our middle name.
Howdy, howdy, and welcome to episode 160 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. My name is Greg Lindberg. On this episode, we are chatting with a gentleman who is an adaptive athlete who happens to be fully sighted. So I think you'll really find it interesting to learn about a different type of adaptive sports outside of the blind sport space. But in addition to his athletic pursuits, he's also very committed to making live sports more accessible to blind and visually impaired sports fans, and hopefully you'll enjoy hearing about the efforts he's already making in order to make a difference on that front. So let's go ahead now and get rolling with episode 160 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. All right, so here on this episode of Eyes Free Sports, I would like to welcome Jacob Kaplan to the podcast. And Jake is a member of the U.S. men's cerebral palsy national soccer team and has also recently gotten into audio description for sports for the blind and visually impaired community. Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Really appreciate taking the time to do this. And as you know, I typically feature, blind and visually impaired athletes on here. So really interested and kind of fascinated to learn about your journey with cerebral palsy and just kind of, how that might compare to blind sports as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to bring a new perspective to the podcast.
Cool. Sounds good. So Jake, why don't we kick things off just kind of talking about your background as far as where you were born and your formative years?
Yeah, so I was born in Red Bank, New Jersey. I grew up in a town called Morganville. All my life, I grew up playing sports from a really young age. My parents enrolled me in baseball, soccer. I played other sports like basketball, flag football. And the moment that I really fell in love with soccer was when I was around like 7, 8 years old. I kind of realized that I was better with my feet than I was with my hands. My dad was the coach of all my sports teams. He was one of the biggest reasons that I was involved in sports. When I was 6, I became a patient of Shriners Hospital for Children, and I had a tendon transfer done on my left arm. I was born with left-sided hemiplegia, and one of the things that I really didn't like doing was physical therapy. And the doctor basically told my parents that the best medicine for me would be to play sports. And I fell in love with soccer so much that I eventually wanted to take myself to another level. I wanted to play travel soccer. All of my friends were leaving the recreation sports and moving to more competitive teams. So I wanted that for myself too. And so I made the decision that I was going to play soccer on a travel team. And my first 4 years of trying out for my hometown team in Morganville, they cut me every year. And my parents, they always told me they encouraged me to work harder and to keep trying. They didn't go to the town and tell the team to just put me on the team or anything like that. They always encouraged me to work harder, so that's what I did. And the fourth year that I got cut from my town team, I my dad had me try out for his hometown team in a town called Matawan, and I tried out for that team. And basically, I didn't necessarily make the team, but I kind of did. The coach he sat me down and he told me that although I had no skills, I had something that he couldn't teach, and that was to be on the field and play with heart and to be aggressive and to want to be there. And so originally I had made the team I had made the team as a practice player. He ended up telling me at the end of our conversation that um he pointed to my heart and he told me that I can't teach you to play with this, and he can give me the skills. And so I spent the entire summer practicing with the team 3 days a week. And by the end of the summer, I ended up making the team. He said I wasn't going to be a practice player. I was actually going to be on the team. And I made my first travel soccer team at 10 years old. And from there, I made friendships that were really meaningful and that would last a lifetime. And that was the start of my soccer journey.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. I did want to just briefly go back to you mentioned, the one doctor that encouraged you to play sports. I feel like that's kind of a rare instance in the disability community, doctors or medical folks, encouraging those with disabilities to go pursue kind of maybe things that society wouldn't expect them to do. So I feel like that's a really great story.
Yeah, his name was Dr. Cozen. He was my orthopedic surgeon, and I think that comment that he made to my parents really got them motivated to really put me in all sorts of sports, have me try all different things. I think my dad, even before I did start playing sports, and my dad always wanted to be the coach of my sports teams. But I think what Dr. Cozen had told my parents really kind of ignited a fire, so to speak, in them to really get me active and to really push me to be athletic.
Right, right, absolutely. That's awesome to hear. So yeah, then just kind of continuing the journey on. So I know you mentioned the travel team. I feel like 10 is kind of young to be on a travel team. I feel like it's more maybe like middle high school age that you hear about travel teams.
Oh yeah, I'd been playing soccer a lot in elementary school, and I think in New Jersey the travel soccer team when the travel soccer scene when I was growing up was pretty big, and most of like the good friends that I've made in playing rec soccer, they just started going to play travel. And year after year, more of my friends would go on to make our hometown team. And I wanted to not only play with them, but play more competitively and play at a higher level. And so my parents always encouraged me to give it a shot. And although after every year I was disappointed, they always made it a point to never give up, tell me to keep working hard. And eventually, although I didn't make my hometown team, I I made a team that I made really great friends on, and it was in a really great environment, and we were really competitive throughout my years on the team.
Right, right, nice. Then as far as education, talk to me just kind of about your educational journey and in college as well.
In high school, I went to Marlboro High School. Actually, I didn't play soccer in high school. I played 1 year on my middle school team, but during my senior year, I actually quit playing soccer, and I was in the midst of applying to schools during my senior year, and I ended up going to the University of West Virginia. And at West Virginia, I ended up going undecided, and ultimately I chose to pursue exercise physiology with an emphasis in health professions. Originally, I made the decision that I wanted to go to medical school, So I was taking all those courses to prepare myself to go to medical school, um, all sorts of science, organic chemistry, biochemistry, neuroscience. Um, and then yeah, in a nutshell, that's really kind of my academic history.
Right. Gotcha. So you're a Mountaineer, West Virginia Mountaineer, right?
Yep. Let's go Mountaineers.
Yeah, my school, USF, University of South Florida, we used to be in the same conference with you guys back in the Big East days, so that was always a big game playing West Virginia in football.
Yeah. My mom actually went to USF.
Oh, she did. Wow.
Yeah, she
Wow.
did.
Another
I actually
bowl.
applied to USF. I think that was one of the two schools I didn't get into.
Gotcha. Interesting. Wow. There are more bowls out there than I realized.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. So then, in terms of your journey to the national team, the men's cerebral palsy national soccer team, just talk to me about kind of what drove you to pursue that.
Yeah, so I had no idea the team existed growing up. So I like to think that I started playing soccer and kept playing soccer up until high school just because of my passion for the game and the friendships that I made. But once I got to my senior year of high school, I wasn't getting recruited to go play at any big schools, or even any small schools. So I decided that for me, like I was at this point in my life, I was done playing soccer. I wanted to spend more time with my friends and focus my energy on other things. And so 8 months after I quit in February, I was on YouTube scrolling through YouTube videos, and I was watching YouTube videos of Paralympic track. And I kind of thought to myself, maybe they've got a sport that I can play in. I grew up playing soccer my whole life. I'd consider myself very athletic. And so I went to the Paralympic website, and I saw that they had a Paralympic soccer team. And I did some more research, and I went on their Facebook page, and it said they were having tryouts. And so when I went over to eat dinner at my dad's house, I asked him. I said, "Hey, Dad," I was like, do you think I should try out for the Paralympic soccer team, now called the Cerebral Palsy Men's National Team?" And he said, "You know what?" He said, "You got nothing to lose. You might as well send the head coach an email." So I sent our head coach, Stuart Sharp, an email, and within 2 hours, maybe within 4 hours at most, he got back to me. And I was really surprised. I thought it would take him a little while to get back to me, but he got back to me really quickly. And he was asking me more about my impairment, where I've played, the leagues that I've played in, or the travel leagues that I've played in, more about my background and my history with soccer. And so I sent him that information. He asked me to film a couple videos for him. And next thing I know, he's connecting me with our coordinator at the time. His name was Kevin. And I was to go to March, and go to the training camp they were having at Clemson. It was a combined senior team camp and identification and development camp for younger players. And that's how I got introduced to cerebral palsy soccer, and that was really when this whole journey for me started.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So yeah, let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into just kind of how the whole journey has gone, being part of the team and, representing the U.S. at the national level.
My journey with the team has been nothing short of amazing and life changing. When I arrived at my first training camp, I had never met another person with a disability similar to mine. It was really eye-opening to see people like me carry themselves with so much confidence. And growing up having cerebral palsy, I had very low self-esteem, low confidence, and to be able to meet and connect with people who are similar to me was really like a life-changing experience. And same goes for, how all those players played on the field. My first session and my first day was actually kind of a disaster. I didn't know what type of fitness and what type of level of, cardiovascular fitness I needed to be in. And so I showed up to the camp really not in shape. I hadn't played soccer in 8 months, and I didn't We played, I think, a 3 times 8 minute scrimmage, and I didn't even make it through the first 5 minutes of the first scrimmage. I was really embarrassed and I was really upset with myself. I had to leave the field, and the medical staff had to look after me. They told me that I was cramping all over. I was out of breath,
Oof.
and I was dehydrated too. Yeah, I didn't drink much water on the plane, and the med staff actually told me that like I looked as pale as a ghost. So I was
Wow.
completely out of it. I remember I went up to our head coach, and with almost like with tears in my eyes, telling him that I was sorry and whatnot, and he told me that we have a whole week, so we'll see what happens. We'll just try to make the best of it. And so I went back to the hotel. I was a little bit upset with myself. That session I played with the senior team. They had on a different field. They had the identification and development team. And so I spoke to my dad. I was pretty down, and he told me just to do the best I can and to make the most of this opportunity and to just finish the week strong and enjoy myself. And I and yeah, so I that week I made it the effort to be the best version of myself, and it started with the very next session. And I showed up to that session the next day, and I played as hard as I could and played as well as I could, and I caught the attention of our former assistant coach. His name was Ross, and at some I think at some point during the week, Ross had told our head coach Stewart that he should give me a second chance with the senior team. And so Coach Sharp called me back up at some point during the week, early on in the week, to to train again with the senior team. And that session I played a lot better than in my first session. And then for the rest of the week, I went down with the development team. And then the last day when we played a full 60-minute scrimmage, I I got called up to play with the senior team again. And then next thing you know, I'm off the plane, and I got another invite saying I'm going to come back for another training camp in the following month. And that was a really unique experience for me. That just kind of solidified the fact that I have to start believing in myself more, and I have to start playing with more confidence. And as I played in more training camps, and as I continued to form friendships and get to know the guys on the team, their competitive nature, their confidence, and the way that they carry themselves on and off the field started to rub off on
Wow. Wow. And definitely shows, persistence pays off and first impressions aren't always, the ultimate outcome, right?
me. Exactly.
Nice.
And yeah, 8 months later, after my first training camp, I went to my first international tournament in Quito, Ecuador,
Hmm.
and I ended up helping the team bring home a bronze medal, and playing a big part in that. I scored in the bronze medal match, and that's a moment and memory that I'll never forget.
Wow. Wow. I was just going to ask as far as achievements, and that's definitely a biggie right there, especially on the international stage like that.
Absolutely.
Wow. And I'm also curious, just like in general, has this national team been around for quite a while, or what's kind of the history with the team?
Yeah, the team has been around for quite a while. One of my teammate Adam, who's a really good friend of mine, he's been on the team the longest. I think he's been on the team since before 2010. I think the
Hmm.
London Olympics and Paralympics was in 2010, right?
2012, I think.
Oh, 2012. So I think
Summer,
he's been
yeah.
on the team since 2010, but he went to the 2012 games in in London. But I think even before him, the team existed. Like the team, I think has been around since the 90s. I'm not entirely sure on the exact specifics of when the team was founded and how long it's been around for.
Sure, sure, no problem. But wow, that's amazing that he's, still out there getting it done. And that was kind of another question as far as like the ages, the demographics of the team, of the players. It's a kind of a wide swath of folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's from people from different backgrounds all around the country. There's a core group of guys that are retired military veterans.
Hmm.
Um, some of them are Army Rangers, Marines. There have been guys who are retired that I've played with that have been in the military, special operations. Those guys have traumatic brain injuries. They just acquired a brain injury serving overseas. There's some guys right now that are currently college students, studying to get degrees, and they're making time to be a part of the team while they're studying at school, and they're keeping on their training that way. I've got teammates and friends that they they work normal jobs, accountants, finance. One of my teammates, our captain, one of our co-captains, Ben, he lives in New York City and he works in finance for a real estate company. My other teammate, John, he's working on getting his PhD right now. I think it's in molecular biology.
Oh, wow.
Um, so all sorts of people from all sorts of background, people from New York, people from Minnesota, people from California, Arizona, Atlanta, New Jersey, all over the place.
Right, right. That's amazing. And something I probably should have asked earlier, but I am curious as far as cerebral palsy. I assume it is like a spectrum, kind of like blindness and low vision, where you have, all folks at all kind of different levels, so to speak.
Yeah, and I feel like when I kind of gave you my background, I probably should have introduced this in a more clearer light. But so cerebral palsy is a spectrum. Everybody's affected differently. For me, I just have left-sided hemiplegia, so I've got it in my left arm and in my left leg. Most of the guys with CP on the team are hemiplegic. They've got CP either in their left side or their right side. As for, our classification system, we've got three different classifications that define different levels of impairment. We've got threes, twos, and ones. So our threes are the least impaired player, ones are the most impaired player, and two is in between that. And then I fall into the FT1 category, so the one of the more impaired players on the field. So in relation to the rest of the team, my CP is a little bit more severe than most. In addition to hemiplegia, are one or two guys that I know of that I think have diplegia, so they just have cerebral palsy in their legs. And then also there are guys that have had strokes as well. So they had a stroke at some point in their life, and I like to call it acquired CP. They don't like when when we call it acquired CP. Um, but yeah, so there's stroke, and then like I said, with the most of the military guys that are on the team, they make up the largest portion of traumatic brain injury. Uh, they just acquired a brain injury serving overseas, defending the flag. Yeah, those are really the different classifications and the differing levels of ability throughout the team.
Right. Interesting. And yeah, very similar to adaptive sports for the blind, like B1, B2, B3,
Hmm.
the different vision classifications. So it sounds like there definitely are some parallels there.
Yes, and I forgot to mention the age ranges of the guys on the team. Our oldest guy was a goalkeeper for us. He just joined the team this past year. He was 50 years old. Our our next oldest guys are the Rangers, 38 and 37. And then you've got some guys in their mid 30s, 34, 33, and then I would say a good majority of the guys, especially there's a core group of guys since I joined the team in 2018. We've all kind of grown up together in the team, like mid 20s, 26, 27, 28, and then we got a group of younger guys too. So guys who are in college in their early 20s, and just about to turn 20, 19, and 18. So a really a lot of a diverse range of ages, but I'd say that, despite the difference in age, we have a really close-knit culture and we've built really great friendships amongst each other on and off the field.
Awesome. So great to hear. And then I am curious too about like your schedule in terms of training, in terms of competitions. How would you kind of, sum up that?
Yeah, we usually have with the CP team, we usually have about one major competition a year, and we have one time where we go abroad to play friendlies. As for training, I'm one of the full-time players living in Atlanta, so they offered me a professional contract to live down here and play full-time, which I'm really grateful for. I've been doing it for just about 4 years now. And my training schedule here full-time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we train at Atlanta United. We train from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then on top of that, Mondays and Fridays, I usually go to the gym and work out. Most of my workouts are upper body focused. And with a most of my workouts are upper body focused. I do some maintenance for my lower body, just because of the amount of running and training that we do throughout the week. Also on Wednesdays, I play in an adult league to just to get some more touches on the ball in the competitive environment. Since I've been nursing this injury, I haven't really been playing much these past 2 weeks, but I'm hoping to get back to it soon. And then on top of that, we have training camps. Usually they're from like Thursday to Sunday, and we have them every every other month. And then as for our competition schedule this year, I think we're supposed to have some friendlies organized at some point in May, and we will be having a tournament, hopefully on a major tournament or World Cup, hopefully on home soil this coming year in the fall.
Nice. Very cool. Then, yeah, before we get into audio description, I did want to ask you about blind soccer. I know you're somewhat familiar with the sport, I believe. I think you might even have some connections. So just kind of talk to me about your impressions of blind soccer.
Yeah, I love blind soccer. Blind soccer is it's such a cool sport to watch. I've become pretty good friends with a player on the blind men's national soccer team. I've been friends with I became friends with this guy named Antoine. We met through this adaptive drive leadership course that US Soccer has put on for 2 years. And I usually when he goes away to tournaments, he sends me the link for the games, and I'll try to watch a couple. But it's really impressive what the athletes can do with the ball. The way that they can dribble, communicate. It's really awesome to watch, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And I definitely would encourage anyone who hasn't seen it before to definitely look into it because it's really amazing and it's really cool. I think blind soccer and power soccer are two of my favorite adaptive versions.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. And it is hard to believe we're just, what, 2.5 years away from the 2028 Olympics and Paralympics in LA, where the men's blind soccer team is going to make its debut at the Paralympics. So super, stoked about that. And I personally am kind of hoping to maybe get a chance to get out there to LA and actually take in some Paralympic action.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how the Paralympics audio describe the games, and I'm really excited for the guys that are going to have the opportunity to compete. It's they've been working really hard, and Antoine every now and again when I catch up with him, he it seems like the team's headed in a really positive direction. So I'm hoping the guys keep training hard, and I'm hoping that all of their training pays off when it's time for them to step on the field in 2028.
Absolutely. And hey, great transition right there. I appreciate the layup in terms of audio description. So let's just kind of talk about how you were first introduced to audio description and just kind of your initial, impressions of it.
I was first introduced to audio description in December 2023, I want to say. So US Soccer, they put on this leadership course. I alluded to it earlier, but it's called the Adapt and Thrive Leadership Course, and it's specifically designed for people with disabilities to come together to create a project or a business to increase accessibility in soccer. And so I wasn't necessarily sure that I wanted to do it, but our head coach Stuart, he he told me that I should give it a try. I When I first joined the centralized training program in Atlanta, my goal was to study for my MCAT and go to medical school. While studying for my MCAT, I just realized that medical school wasn't something that I wanted to continue to pursue, so I wasn't really doing anything. I got a second job working in an optometrist office, and Stuart told me that this would be a cool opportunity to connect with people in the community. And he said I didn't have to have a project right now. He said I could think of a project, um, and when I get to the leadership course, I can figure it out throughout the week. And so when we went to the Pan American Games in Chile in 2023, the inspiration for this project was a goalball player. We met somebody from the national team in Santiago for the Pan American Games, and we played chess with him. And he had low vision, and in order for him to see the chessboard, he had to look at it really closely. But we invited him to come to one of our games, and he said he appreciated the invite, but he said he'd rather stay in the village and hold his phone right up to his face so he can watch and see the game more clear. So that kind of got me thinking that, it'd be really awesome if there was a service that was out there for people who have blindness or low vision to come to the game and be able to know what's happening on the field at the stadium. And so I left the Pan American Games, and I was going to go into this leadership course with with the idea that I was going to create a haptic feedback board. That was what I was going to do. I was going to do a haptic feedback board, and throughout that whole week, I was kind of like building an outline, building a plan to how I was going to make that happen. And I It was a week or two after the leadership course, and I'm trying to plan all of this stuff, and I'm sitting here and I'm realizing that this is going to be really difficult. And while I was doing all this research, I came across a service called audio descriptive commentary, which is basically delivering sports descriptions for people who have blindness or low vision at the sporting venue. And I was thinking that this might be a lot easier for me to implement. And while I was thinking that, literally within the hour, I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to pivot. I had two people reach out to me. One was my head coach, and then the other was the guy who was responsible for really just building the program and bringing it to U.S. Soccer. His name was Jose, and Jose became my really close friend and my mentor. And they both reached out to me like within an hour. It was a sign. It was a
Hmm.
sign.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna take that and I'm going to take it as a sign, and this is where I'm gonna pivot. And so now that I had audio descriptions in mind, it was, how am I gonna implement it? Who am I gonna implement it with? And so in order for me to build a plan and bring it to somebody, I needed to do research. And this is where Jose came in, because without Jose, I would not I would not have been able to speak with the people that I did and connect with the people in the industry and in the community. He opened doors for me that I wouldn't have been able to open myself. And those doors that he opened for me, I made the most of the opportunity. And in turn, they opened more doors for me down the road. And so before I did my first pilot with US Soccer, I spoke to a plethora of different people in the industry. I spoke to somebody who is the National Disability Access Officer for the whole UK. He's experienced in implementing audio descriptive commentary at Wembley. Um, he was the first person that I reached out to me that I reached out to. And then down the line, what I did was it was also extremely important to me that I engage with people who are going to be using the service, because it's for them, and I wanted the whole pilot program that I was creating to be a reflection of the wants and the needs of the community that it was meant for. And so I spoke to a blind and deaf influencer. I spoke to a goalball player. I spoke to a founder of blind soccer and a blind community advocate in Texas. I spoke to all sorts of people across the country, interviewed them. I just got their feedback and got their opinion. And not only did I get their opinion on how they would like the service to be done, but I also, have a passion for accessibility. And when it came time to implement this, I wanted the event itself to be accessible. And that was the start of my journey with getting this pilot program off the ground. But not only is it pilot program, but pilot program turned into my business.
Right, right. That's amazing. And I am curious too, just kind of your impressions of the blind community, before we get into maybe, some actual games you have described. How would you kind of, your introduction to the blind community and folks you've interacted with, how's all that going for you?
It's been going great. I really like interacting with the community. I really like, sitting down and being somebody that can help support their journey to enjoy sports as much as I have. Every person when I sat down with them and either had a Zoom call like we're having now, or had a phone call with, they the moment that I mentioned that I'm trying to do something like this and try to make it more of a service that's occurring more in sports, they've been really excited about it, and they've been extremely helpful in giving feedback. Um, the people in the blind community and the low vision community, um, to me, it seems like they really want a way to enjoy sports more. They want a way to get better descriptions. They want to know more of the details, and it seems like what's happening in the US is really going to be the start of something huge. And I'm hoping that I can play a big part in developing it so that more people can enjoy sports and the way that I have.
Definitely. Yeah. I absolutely love your attitude and your mindset. Just as a sports fan myself personally, and I know there's so many of us out there in the blind and visually impaired community. So I know you have had the chance to actually describe soccer, and I'm really curious just how that experience went for you.
Describing soccer has been so much fun. I have a blast doing it. I wish I could do it more. I'm actively working on ways to be able to describe more live sporting events, but it's really great. It was a little bit difficult at first. It's funny when I did my first pilot with U.S. Soccer, I actually didn't describe the game. We had planned to fly out some radio broadcasters whom I did a little training with, just to tell them how I wanted the descriptions to be delivered, and what I was looking for, the types of descriptions that they were going to give. Um, and unfortunately, when we were supposed to fly them out, we shouldn't have flown them out the day of because bad weather in Georgia prevented their flight from coming.
Ooh.
So we had to roll we had to roll with the NBC studio broadcast, which wasn't as descriptive, and we let the fans know, and I was really disappointed, but they got to test the technology that we were using, and so that was a positive. And actually, some of the fans actually enjoyed the commentary. One of the the participants that we had there, I think he was 10 years old. His mom told us after the game that she's never seen her son so locked into a match before. And even though we couldn't provide the right commentary, we that was something that I was really happy that it made a small impact. And then after that, I made it my mission to figure out a way to learn the commentary. And this is kind of segueing into where I started describing my first games. And so I I was aware that the Club World Cup was going to be happening in Atlanta and all over the country. And I actually actually had I made it to the final rounds of interviews for the accessibility coordinator position, and through doing that, I knew that there was going to be an opportunity to get trained on audio description. And at first, I was just going to go and watch, but I ended up deciding that I was nervous to first off, I was nervous to get on the mic and start describing because I had never really described before. I was a little bit, self-conscious, but I ended up just telling myself to get over myself, and it was gonna be a lot of fun, so I might as well just go for it. And so I did the training. I did it with an organization called I did it with an organization called they were Allen Marks. They're based out of the UK. They were hired to come in and help train commentators and describers. And so I did the training. It was an 8-hour day. I did an assessment, and then I practiced every day up until the Club World Cup. And the first game that I described at the Club World Cup, it was Inter Miami versus FC Porto, if I'm remembering correctly. I know Inter Miami was there because it was the first time I ever got to watch Messi play,
Sure.
and
Yep.
yeah, one of the I was it was on my bucket list to watch him play, and that was just it was amazing. I was the only describer there, so it was a lot to manage for a whole 45-minute block and then another 45-minute block. By the end of it, I was absolutely exhausted. Um, but I had some of my friends in the blind and low vision community tune in because I wanted some feedback, and the biggest thing that they wanted from me was I was told I did a good job of tracking the ball, but they wanted to know the names more. So throughout the course of the tournament, I I tried to get better with the names. At some point in the middle of the tournament, I also had a pilot with U.S. Soccer in Cincinnati, Ohio. So that was another game that I described. It was U.S. women's national team versus Ireland, and U.S. Soccer ended up making a little docu-series video about it, which came out really great. I had a really great time describing the game for those fans, and I was nervous to interact with them after the game, but they all loved the commentary. They thought it was amazing, and I was so happy that they enjoyed it. I was so happy that I made the decision and took the steps necessary in order to learn how to do audio descriptions because it was just that moment and to see the smile on their faces, it really made me happy and made me realize that this is heading in a good direction. And then I did 4 games, I think, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And the last game I did, I think, was the best game that I've ever described. It was PSG versus Inter Miami. It was a semifinal. It was like two of the biggest soccer clubs in the world, and it was just I made it an effort to I made flashcards. I memorized the numbers and the names of the players, and I even had some pictures of what they looked like so I could recognize them for their physical characteristics. And it was like clockwork for me. I was the ball would go to a player, I would describe its location, and then I would be able to drop a name in if I had enough time. And I was able to just it was just the best game that I had described to date, and it was probably the most fun that I had just because I was able to, say the names off the top of my head after seeing a number, and I started to get into a groove of tracking the ball in the field.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that kind of the journey with all that, and I would imagine there's a lot of preparation, involved in describing a game, kind of leading up to it. I would think.
Yes, there is a lot of preparation. What I would do is I'd have like a notebook, and I would write down the name and the number of the player, write down what country they're from. Um, I would I would do that for both teams, and I would actually towards the end of the tournament, what I started doing was is I took the entire roster and I started doing them in number order, just so that if I happen to forget the name of a player, I could chronologically find their number real quick in that order and be able to get their name. I also drew a small picture of the pitch And a really important part of delivering audio descriptions is having of really solid foundational knowledge of the different areas of the field and having specific names of those areas of the field, not only to help the listener be able to track the ball, but it's really helpful for the person describing to have a system that you can rely on so that um you can accurately describe a certain area of the pitch so that you don't stumble over your words or you don't take too long to describe a certain area just so that when the ball, because the game of soccer is very, very quick. And so you need to be able to just see where the ball is on the field and describe that location. And then once the ball moves, pick up from the new location and keep tracking it. And so having that, that picture of the field is extremely helpful if I want to, briefly refresh myself, while I'm describing. On top of that, I also like to try to have a list of action verbs. It gets really boring if all the describers saying he passes here, he passes there, he passes here, or he shoots. Um, Being able to describe different types of actions is also huge, right? There's different types of passes in soccer. You can loft a pass, you can ping a pass, you can ping a pass. Some passes are long, some passes are short. Same with shots. Shots, you can blast a shot, you can place a shot, you can curl a shot, you can chip a shot. There's all sorts of ways to describe the different actions on the field. So having those action verbs are very helpful, and having those adjectives are also very helpful just so that if I'm finding myself using the same vocabulary over and over again, I can look down at my sheet and be like, okay, this is a word I'll try to incorporate next, or this is something that I normally do say, but I haven't been saying. So, like having a list of action verbs, having the numbers and the names of the players, having a view of the pitch, a small picture of the pitch that's labeled is really helpful. And another thing that I do to prepare is I just do a lot of reading on the history of the clubs, past tournaments, different types of the different players to watch, the statistics. Something with statistics, it can be a little bit tricky because some people who just do radio, they might be a little bit statistic heavy when you should be describing. But something that I always like to say with statistics, every time you have a statistic, your statistic should help the listener imagine the game better. And what I mean by that is if, we could just take soccer, for example. If there's like a player to watch who's a really prolific goal scorer, and they scored so far this season, they've scored more goals than they have played in games. Um, I think to take that one step further, you should describe, what makes them such a great goal scorer, right? Um, are they are they a type of player that's in the right place at the right time all the time? Or are they a type of player that's in the right spot at the right time, scoring tap-ins? Are they a player that takes the game by the horns and beats people and creates space to create opportunities? Are they the type of player that, blasts shots in with power? Or are they the type of player to place balls in the corner? You can always take your descriptions another level, and if you do happen to slide statistics in, just use statistics that'll enhance the experience and enhance the mind's eye of the person that's listening. I don't know if you would agree with that, Greg, but yeah, that's kind of my preparation.
Wow. Yeah, I do agree. And that is really fascinating. Just kind of the strategy that goes into it. The things that people don't realize, whether it's broadcasting or being, an audio describer or whatnot, kind of thinking of all these different factors and how you're presenting the information. And it's kind of one kind of super random thing that came to mind. You were talking about like a list of adverbs and, not repeating yourself as far as like certain words or verbiage. I remember seeing an interview with Alex Trebek years ago when he was hosting Jeopardy, and he talked about like how he didn't want to just say yes, if a contestant got the answer right, he would say like correct or you got it, or made a point about like you have to use a variety of terminology and verbiage, and otherwise it just gets stale. And obviously that wasn't sports related, but I think just in terms of like broadcasting or communication in general, like you're saying, just kind of mixing it up and why variety is so important.
Exactly. And it's difficult at first. It takes practice, but the more that you practice it and the more that you try, the easier that it'll come. Just like, practicing a sport or just like, exercising, describing is not easy. It's a muscle and you've got to flex it in order to get better at it.
No doubt. Well said. I know you did allude to this a little bit, but I'm also curious about your take on, audio description for sports versus TV or radio play-by-play, the similarities and differences there.
Starting with the similarities, I think with between audio description, TV, and radio, that it's important that when you're delivering audio descriptions that you still make it entertaining. Using the emotion in your voice to reflect the game, choosing the things that you say carefully so that you can still make the game entertaining and not just deliver everything in a monotone voice. I think similarly across all platforms that the goal of all three should be to there should be an entertainment aspect to it. And although audio description is the majority of providing descriptions about what is exactly happening, you can still make it entertaining while doing that. I think what's different is definitely the level of detail you're providing, and that goes across all three. I've heard that hockey is very similar to audio descriptions. Would you agree with that, Greg? That the radio broadcasters they're pretty decent with their descriptions.
I think so, yeah. And I think that the fact that it's so fast paced and that puck is always moving, throughout the game,
Hmm.
you have to be, even on TV as well. I mean, not every TV play by play broadcaster for hockey is like that, but I've definitely heard that, even on television as well. Just much more detail, much more description than you might find in other sports.
Yeah, and I think that my favorite part about delivering audio descriptions, and the one thing that truly separates sports descriptions from TV and radio, is the little details. And the best example that I can give is an experience that I had in Cincinnati for the second pilot that I helped U.S. Soccer put on. And while we were there, I think it was a pretty hot day. And the referee decided that at halfway through the first half and halfway through the second half that the teams were going to have water breaks. And while they were having water breaks, something that I described, I was describing the players walking over to the benches, and then I was describing that the athletic trainers and the physios, they had these bright red coolers, and inside the coolers they had these dark blue towels, and they were handing these towels to the players, and the players were wiping their faces with them, putting them around their necks, and they were usually they're soaked in ice to help the players cool off. And I described that, and then I moved on and started describing other things. And when I went to go meet the fans, the father of one of the fans who was using the service, he came up to me and he said, something that I really liked that you did that I never thought to tell my son ever during a game was what you said about the blue towels. And it was, and then he told me, he was like, son turned to me while that was going on and he goes, Dad, it looks like they're using these dark blue towels to cool off. And his dad looked and like looked at the field, and he thought to himself like, wow, that's like a detail that I never really would have thought to describe and that I took for granted. And then he was telling me how he he appreciated, him and his son appreciated the fact that even before the game started, I described like the firework cannons that were on the far side of the field lined up, and I counted seven of them out, and I described the outfits that the people were wearing, and then I described the color of the fireworks, and it was like little details like that, and that's one of my favorite things about describing. I love providing those little details and providing as much detail as I can to paint a picture of what's going on.
Absolutely. And that's such a great point. When it comes to a sporting event, you have the action on the field or court or whatever the environment might be. But there's so much more, whether it's cheerleaders, halftime show, like you're saying, fireworks, the mascot dancing, on the dugout or with fans,
Hmm.
or, fans like pushing around a beach ball or batting around a beach ball in the stands. I mean, there's so many things that maybe occasionally, a radio broadcaster more so might mention, because there's no visuals, obviously, in radio broadcasting for the listener. But yeah, there's just so many more elements to it, that if you're not blind or visually impaired, you might not think of that go into that. So all great points.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I really like I'm really hoping one day I get to describe a baseball game, because there's, different from soccer. Once the game starts, I mean, the ball is constantly in motion and it's really the focal point of the game. There's no time to really describe what's going on in the stadium, and there's not much to describe unless there's a goal that's scored and then the fans are going crazy. But with baseball, and I've spoken to some friends of mine who described baseball, but it seems like in addition to describing, what's going on the field, there's a lot that goes on in the stadium. And I'd love to give a crack at describing a baseball game one of these days.
Nice. Yeah. How about like basketball, football, even say hockey? I mean, would you kind of be up for any description when it comes to all these different sports? Or
Absolutely. I would love to describe basketball. I'd love to describe hockey. I think football would be a little bit difficult. Football, I'd have to really kind of dive into the formations, because I think that would be a huge part of delivering audio descriptions. I think being able to describe how a team is lining up, the different types of players that are in motion, and being able to recognize certain plays and describe what those plays are. I think that having that foundational knowledge, especially, I think the best people to describe football would probably be the people who've played it and coached it. But I would definitely love to give it a crack, and I would take the time to study the best I can and try to understand the formations and the different motions and a different way the defense set up. So I think it would be a really I'd welcome the challenge.
awesome. Noted. Cool. Then before we wrap up here, I did want to give you the chance to mention any kind of contact info if folks are interested in reaching out or learning more about you. Any kind of social media you want to mention, or an email address?
Yeah. If anyone wants to shoot me an email, the best way to reach me is Jacob Kaplan 837 at gmail.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. My Instagram, I want to say it's caps KAPS underscore 1517.
Awesome. As always, I'll include links to that info in the show notes so folks have that info. And then I know you did mention the video earlier that was done that I thought was really well done, and did include, some examples of soccer audio description. So I'll include a link to that in the show notes as well.
Did you ever end up being able to take a look at the description?
I have not, but I definitely will. Yeah, and any listeners out there, that want to read that, if you do find the video link when I post that in the show notes, feel free to read the description, because I know, Jake, you mentioned there's, pretty detailed description of the video.
Yes.
Yeah, so I know, I'm anxious to read that just to kind of see, description of a pre-recorded piece of content as well.
Yeah, I made a big push for when US Soccer posted the video for them to create something like that. So I'm hoping that for anyone that watches, that it'll be nice added context onto some of the scenery that's in the video, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. I'm all about accessibility, so appreciate you pushing for that, and just want to thank you so much for your time, Jake. Again, we've been chatting with Jake Kaplan here on Eyes Free Sports, and congrats on all your successes already, Jake, and I know there's a lot more to come for you down the road.
Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to when we get to catch up again.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Sounds great. Thanks again.
Of course.
To hear more episodes of the Eyes Free Sports podcast and to subscribe, search for Eyes Free Sports on your favorite podcast platform or visit eyesfreesports.com. Be sure to follow the Eyes Free Sports podcast at facebook.com/eyesfreesports and on Twitter at Eyes Free Sports.